Hey all, Tom Ryan here from Tom's Big Spiders. This time around, we're going to be taking a look at Vitalius paranaensis, the Brazilian brown. I've had these guys for quite some time. As a matter of fact, here is some footage of the first video I ever did with them. I'm not sure if this is the male or female, but way back in April of 2016, I picked up two of these from Tom Patterson, who now runs Hardcore Arachnids, if you're interested. And at the time, they were sold as 2-inch juveniles, so about 5 centimeters or so. However, what I realize now looking back at it is they look like they already had their adult color, so they were probably more young adults. The male actually matured out rather quickly within about a year's time or so. The female is the one we're going to rehouse today. She has been a great eater overall, and she puts on decent size with each molt, but she only has been molting about every 2 years or so. And again, more indication that this is an older spider. This is probably full grown now. She's about 4.5 inches or 11.5 centimeters. So a smaller, medium-sized species overall. So a note about these guys, they do appear to be fossorial spiders. Earlier on, I gave them plenty of room to dig. The male dug, and obviously once he matured, he was out and about looking for a lady. My girl dug. I put her in this new enclosure for a while. She had a nice little burrow, but then she kind of collapsed it and only had the cork bark hide. And this hasn't really been enough for her, so she hasn't felt secure in this burrow, which is one of the reasons why we're rehousing her. I want to give her some more room, but we'll talk a bit more about that in the actual video. But awesome little spiders, not particularly widely available and not really widely recognized. They're a little bit underrated, but hopefully some folks will see this and maybe when someone's offering them, they'll take a chance on them. So enough of me talking. Let's take a look at V. paranaensis, or the Brazilian brown. All right, so as you've probably deduced from the introduction, we're about to rehouse Vitalius paranaensis, Brazilian brown. And I've had these guys a long time. I was actually shocked to figure out that I had them almost 9 years now. But what we're going to do, this one is in this enclosure here. So if you take a look at it, and we're going to be very careful today because I just did a podcast, and I'll talk about this more when I get to the behavior, about the most defensive spiders I've kept, and this is one of them now. By defensive, I mean they either run and bolt. In this case, this one, I guess we're talking about it now because I said I'd talk about it later, but we're talking about it now. In this case, this one is very, very, very skittish. Back in the day, she would run and bolt if she goes into, or most tarantulas, once they go into their burrows, they hunker down and they're fine. She would go into the burrow, out of the burrow. She's one of the only spiders I've had almost escape because she will go right out of the side of the enclosure. So we want to give her something that's going to give her more room to do her thing. And quite frankly, I think more room to burrow. When I went back and looked at the older videos I had of these guys, I had two. One of them was a mature male. We had this one here. They were huge burrowers to begin with, so fossorial. And I think what happened here is this enclosure, although she has room to kind of get under that cork bark, because she's cleared out around it, she doesn't feel completely secure in it. It's not like she can go down and hide in a burrow where it's nice and dark. So I think that's the reason why we're getting some of those defensive behaviors. And that's one of the things I try to look at when I have a spider that's particularly defensive. What am I doing wrong? Because most spiders, if given, or tarantulas, if given the room to do what they need to do, web, burrow, hide, whatever it is, they'll do that rather than stand their ground or bolt around. So what we're going to put her into is one of the authentic joy enclosures. I love these things for fossorial species because they give several inches of room for substrates. We got about, 4.5 inches of substrate here. It is my own personal mix of peat, cocoa fiber, so like 40-40, and this is the rest of the substrate that I mix up for my carnivorous plants I screwed up on. And so it has perlite in it. So I have used perlite in the past. Back in the day, it doesn't hurt the spiders. I don't use it anymore. Usually I use it for vermiculite, but it kind of serves the same purpose. Will allow the water to percolate down through, keep the lower levels moist. Upper level, if you notice here, I don't know if it's showing, but you should be able to see the very top level is completely dry. So the most moist stuff is on the bottom. There's a semi-moist level in between, and I put mostly dry stuff on top. Usually with fossorial species, that will get them to go and burrow down beneath. Now, this one is one that I haven't kept, particularly when they were younger. I kept them moist. They burrowed. Usually what I do is I moisten down a corner, let it dry out in between. We'll see how it goes here. If I notice she goes immediately down to that moist stuff, then we're going to keep this spot moist at all times so she can get down to the moisture level she requires. And then as far as what we have inside, we have leaf litter. We have some green sphagnum moss. I've had some people ask me about this. Yes, this stuff probably has some green dye in it. So if people didn't want to use it, I totally understand. I've been using it for years now. I don't use it much anymore for moisture. I haven't had any issues with it. I've talked to other people who always had issues with it, but it's more for decorative purposes. It gives a nice little pop of color. This will usually just stay in the corner. I have some New Zealand sphagnum moss. Again, I just kind of throw stuff in there because it looks pretty. And then we will put the water dish in after the fact. So what we're going to do now is we're going to try to get her from this one here. This is obviously one of the M Design enclosures. They do not sell these anymore at Amazon, so unfortunately I won't have a link, but they measure 12.75 inches by 7 by 7.5 or 32.4 by 18 by 18.4 centimeters. I love them. I have them, so if Billy just, this is how I have them on a shelf up in here where they're stacked one on top of another so they can't get out, they can't open them. That's how I do it. But if you buy these enclosures or find something similar, know that you have to come up with something like this, or you have to basically put a latch on them so that they don't pop open, because spiders can easily climb out of them if there's nothing on top of them. So let's get this one out. This is, I'll admit, I'm not looking forward to this one because this has been a very unpredictable spider. So what we're probably going to do is we're going to pull the cork bark out. Now, normally I would do this before the rehousing, but because this one's so crazy, I want her to be able to relax. We're going to see if we can get some good pictures of her. If not, I do have some older stock footage I was able to get of her just in case we did one of these, because I know this can be a spider that can be crazy and we don't want to mess around too much and have her bolt and get out and ruin our track record. So let's see if we can get this out of here. There she goes. Look, she is...
Spazoid. Oh my god.
And again, what needs to be said is we call it defensive because with most spiders, they'll bolt to a burrow and they'll hide. Her big thing, she's one of the rare spiders I've kept, or tarantulas that I've kept, that even once she's in the burrow and you start doing maintenance, usually they're in the burrow, you start doing maintenance, they're fine. They're like, all right, I'm safe here. She would sometimes bolt out, and I've had her literally, I've opened this up and she's run right for the edge of it. So we want to put her in something that this is going to give her not only a bit more, a lot more room, but more room to dig. I'm hoping, and I think what we're going to see is eventually she's going to end up in here. She's going to dig all this out, dig herself a nice burrow. And then what's going to happen is when I take this off the shelf or I go to do feeding, instead of her feeling insecure and running around, she's going to go into that burrow, hide, and I'll be able to do what I need to do. So again, a lot of times if you have a super defensive spider, don't blame the spider. This is why I don't like the term aggressive. It's not aggressive. They are feeling exposed. They are feeling vulnerable. So they're going to exercise some of those defensive maneuvers they have, whether it be speed, fangs. She used to threat posture quite a bit. She hasn't done it so much lately. We'll see what happens now. So I think this one's going to require the Simply Limeade. And the only problem with this enclosure is it's a little difficult sometimes to get the spiders into it. Boom. All right. Now, a note about catch cups. I try to explain this all the time because people don't seem to get it. The tarantula's entire body is covered with hairs. And basically, there are a sense organ, a huge sense organ. So this is how they're able to detect prey so well, because a slightest little disturbance in airflow hits those hairs, they freak out. So right now, she's feeling, you know, she's kind of scrunched up, she's kind of calm because she's not getting the airflow here. So that's one of the reasons why we use catch cups, is it blocks that airflow, makes the spider feel more secure so we can get her up and out into the new enclosure. And then we're going to try to slip this underneath. Ooh, if I get all that webbing out, that would be kind of cool. Let me see. I didn't even realize she had this much webbing. Oh, oh, oh. Oh. Well, it looks like we're going that way. This is the only problem. And this is something that
her little foot's at the top outside.
Oh.
That's so cute.
Remind me to talk about her size afterwards too. This is the only problem. One of the things you always need to consider when using specific enclosure types is how easy it is to get the spiders in or how easy it is to get the spiders out of them. And that's always a concern. I have certain enclosures that I loved, like the mainstay containers I used to use, the gallon ones, and I stopped using them because they became so difficult. I was putting a lot of basically high-strung arboreal species into them, and they were very difficult to get out. So what I think we're going to do is gently blow in here, see if we can get her down to the bottom. Here we go. Now we might just... We should have took a shorter one. That's my big brush. There you go. Nice and calm. No, there's a little kick. That's, I think, the first time I've seen her kick. There we go. Maybe we can get some shots of her. I'm going to have the top of the enclosure ready. No, I'm not. Yeah, I'm right over there. All right. As Billy hopefully gets some good shots. Very beautiful spider. Now, recently, Nandu chromatus was moved into the same genus as this spider. Obviously, Vitalius. So it is now Vitalius chromatis. You can kind of see when you see pictures of this one, some of the pictures of this one online, you can see kind of a similar look to the striping and whatnot. I've noticed pictures where the females have that red on the booty. I haven't seen that in any of mine, but a very cool spider. I don't see them around all that often though, which is kind of disappointing. Now, growth rate on these, it's kind of hard to tell because as I mentioned in the intro, when I got these 9 years ago, I thought I was getting juveniles. I thought they were juveniles at the time, but after looking at the footage again and realizing how much they've grown over the course of the years, they were probably close to being young adults. I mean, the male ended up molting out rather quickly, I think within a year of me having it. The female is just, you know, she molts every once in a while, not particularly frequently, but she was already pretty good size when I got her. But back when we first got her, the temps, that was when the temperatures in the tarantula room would sometimes dip to the high 60s for a little while during the winter time. It would be high 60s, low 70s winter, and then mid 70s to up to 80 in the summertime. Nowadays, it's more like 70s, low 70s in the wintertime with an occasional drop. And then in the summertime, anywhere from high 70s to mid 80s or so. So again, one of the things we're going to watch with this is whether or not she calms down a bit. I'm thinking she's going to. I'm thinking we're going to get some burrowing out of her. I am waiting to do, I've done a lot of rehousings lately where I purposely rehouse spiders to give them more room so that they can burrow and hopefully be more confident and secure in their surroundings. And what I'll be doing is eventually an update where we go through and we see, did it work? Did they burrow? Did they use the extra space? Did they not? My thought process on this is I've heard people say, well, it's a waste of dirt to give them room to burrow if they don't burrow. And honestly, if you're mixing your own dirt, this dirt is probably 50 cents worth of dirt. So it's worth it to me to throw a little extra dirt in there, have the spider be able to burrow if it wants to. If it doesn't, who cares? It still looks nice. And sometimes you'll get a spider that won't burrow at first. And then years down the road, after being in the enclosure for a while, suddenly they'll start burrowing again. So at least they have that opportunity to do so. All right, so Vitalius paranaensis, Brazilian brown. Awesome little spiders. Again, don't see them all that often, but for people who are trying to get Vitalius, I mean, it stinks because I was trying to get all the Nandus, and then right when I was about to get all the Nandus, they moved Chromatis over here. So now I'm thinking I'm going to try to start collecting Vitalius because they are cool spiders. But like the Nandu, similar personality. Expect a spider that's going to be skittish. It's going to bolt around. It's going to be a little bit defensive, but we'll see if making sure you give it the extra space to do what it needs to do somehow alleviate some of that. So again, I'll definitely update this once this one does what I think it's going to do, which is do a bit of burrowing. I'm really hoping she'll settle down and we'll have a less defensive spider. And that's something always to keep in mind when working with tarantulas, that if you have one that is particularly nasty, a lot of times it can be attributed to its surroundings. Something isn't right for the spider. I've had many folks contact me with spiders like, I don't know what's wrong with this. It's completely crazy. And I look and have like a P. murinus in a very shallow enclosure and its webbing is getting ripped up when you take the top off, or they have a notoriously fossorial old world tarantula in a shallow container so it feels crowded when you open it up. I found that in a lot of cases when you have a spider that acts like that, if you make some changes, do some thinking about it, figure it out. Does it have enough substrate to dig? In this case, you can see it did have technically a place it could hide, but it doesn't seem like it was enough for the spider. So hopefully what I've got it in now will work much better. So just a tip for those of you that are having spiders. And obviously, there's always that odd duck spider out there that no matter what you give it, seems to be a little high strung. That can happen. But I found that most cases, at least for me, when I've had a spider that's either been thrown up threat postures, trying to bolt out of the enclosure, kicking massive amounts of hairs, it's usually because they just don't feel comfortable in their surroundings. So that will do it for this one. As always, if you're new to the channel and you liked what you saw, you can click the little circle up in there. I'll put some other videos over in here. If you take the time to comment, I will respond. It just may take me a little while. It usually takes me about a week to get to them, to be completely honest, but I will get back to you. Guys, as always, stay safe. Have a great one. Catch you next time.